If you are suffering right now, then ask yourself this simple question. How do I know that I am suffering? We're not trying to get rid of our suffering. And I'm not saying that you aren't suffering right now, because if there is suffering, that's going to be quite obvious to you. But we are just being curious about what it is that we are calling suffering. What is the nature of this phenomenon? In a way, we are having an amazing opportunity right now to really familiarize with this thing that is causing so much trouble in our lives, this suffering. So again, how do you know that suffering is here right now? There must be something, so how is it showing up? Is it a particular thought you're having? Is it a particular feeling in the body that is here right now? What exactly is it that lets you know that suffering is here? Just familiarize with how this is showing itself. If it is a thought that is causing your suffering, then just be curious about how this is possible. Again, we're not trying to say that suffering isn't here, but how is it here? That troublesome thought, I am overwhelmed, I am anxious, I can't deal with it. Just familiarize with the actual presence of that thought. How is it actually to feel the presence of that bit of language or mental imagery? And likewise, if there is something going on right now in the body that you would call suffering, just feel the presence of that. Very simple. Almost always when we are suffering, that is somehow showing up as some kind of feeling in the body. So right now, again, you have the opportunity to really see how the sausage is made, so to say. How is suffering actually possible? If it is some kind of feeling, an energy in the chest, tightness in the stomach, clenching of your jaw, agitation in the throat, just familiarize with that. For once, we're not trying to get rid of those feelings. We're actually being with the direct presence of those feelings. And again, I simply ask, how is it? How is it to be suffering right now? To feel those feelings. Are these feelings what we think they are? When we are being in this curious intimacy with the texture of suffering, what do we actually find? Just feel the boundary, the edge of that which you call suffering. Just notice how it is, moment to moment. Not how you imagine it to be, or how you think it should be different, but just the simple actuality of it. Is this suffering? Now, something curious might be happening here as we're just with the presence of experience. We can notice that suffering most likely won't be as intense anymore, because for sure we can say that one suffering causing factor has fallen away, and that is the resistance to suffering. At least for right now, we're not trying to push away this experience of suffering, but we are naturally curious and open about what it actually is. And so the resistance to it, at the very least, has been relaxed. And as you continue to feel the direct presence of suffering, you might also notice another thing that is quite curious. What we call suffering is very hard to pin down. Suffering in its actual presence is not this solidified thing we often perceive it to be. Suffering may be here, yes, but how it's here is not how we think it is. It is so much more fluid and shifting and moving. It is so much less clearly defined than we think it is. Now, as we are exploring the nature of suffering, and strangely find that we are, in a way, relieved of it, don't interpret this as meaning that suffering isn't real and you shouldn't do something to alleviate your suffering. Just be very pragmatic about it. If there's something you can do within the circumstances of your life that alleviates suffering in a direct, uncomplicated way, then go ahead and do that. Maybe there's something to address, something to do, and why not do that? If you can unburden yourself in this way, by all means, go for it. But at the same time, as we're sitting here, and as we're doing whatever we are doing to alleviate our suffering, we can also be curious about what this experience of suffering actually is. It's quite possible that in that simple presence, suffering just dissolves. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just feels a bit more light. Okay. Then that's just that. Don't think of this inquiry as some kind of dogmatic truth. It is very much something that can be very useful and powerful even. But don't hold on to it. Be curious and open, light with it. And the rest will just follow naturally.